Now, you're very welcome back to the Leitrim GAA Podcast. We have something, a little bit of a bonus episode this particular week on the show. Joining me to chat for the next 5 or 10 minutes or so about the 50-mile challenge, his own connection to Leitrim, is Sean McPartlin. Sean, you're very, very welcome to the Leitrim GAA Podcast. How are you?
I'm grand. It's good to be here, Brefna. Enjoy it every week, so it's good to see my own face on the screen there.
Yeah, we all like to see our own faces sometimes. In terms of, I suppose, first of all, Sean McPartlin is definitely a Leitrim name, but I'm not picking up a Leitrim twang from that accent. That's definitely Scottish. Tell us a bit about yourself and who you are, where you're from, and why Leitrim.
Okay, the story goes like this. My grandfather was brought up in Drumkeerin, just south of Drumkeerin. His father was a subtenant on some very boggy fields, and when he died, they lost the tenancy, and 5 of the family went over to Brooklyn. 1 came over to Edinburgh. My grandfather worked as a tram conductor in Brooklyn for long enough to save some money, and he came over to Edinburgh to join his brother. And they opened grocers shops, and they sold produce from our neighbours and relatives on the next farm in Lascillieu, Drumkeerin, who were the Byrne family. And they sold, that's how I came to be born in Edinburgh, because my father was born there, and that was the connection. My father died when I was very young. My mother was Liverpool Irish, and we moved down to England. And then I came back up to Edinburgh to university when I was 18. And I found myself in a kind of strange position in that I didn't really fit in Edinburgh because I'd grown up down in England. And in England, I was known as the Scotsman. And then we started going on holiday to West Clare, to Kilkee in the 60s when I was a teenager. And I thought, actually, I feel very comfortable here. And when I started going to Drumkeerin in the 1970s and meeting up with the Byrne family, who had been our suppliers back in the 1900s, I just felt like I was home. So that's the connection, really. It's a pretty long stretch. It's about, when I was born, we were about 60 years out of Leitrim, but I just felt I was Leitrim man, and then I was looking for a connection. And I have a horror of paddywhackery, you might call it, the sort of stuff you get at Celtic Park or green beer or leprechauns and all that sort of thing. So I was looking, the Leitrim I was interested in was more the Leitrim of Seamus O'Rourke or Edwina Guckian or John McGahan. That would be the kind of, I've never wanted to romanticize the place. I've never found myself saying, it'd be great to be farming up on Corrie Mountain, up to your backside in slush and all that sort of thing. I've always wanted the connection with the real place. Obviously got the connection with the Byrne family still, which I very much value. And that's been a great joy through the years. But what the GAA team does is it's a focal point. If I'm watching Leitrim and I'm surrounded by people in Leitrim jerseys, I feel just as much at home as they do. I don't feel like I'm an interloper. I don't feel like I'm part of the diaspora. And whether that would be in Gaelic Park in New York or down in Ruislip in London or at Park Sean, I just feel like I'm part of the crowd and I feel I belong. And I feel it's a real connection for all the fact that the family's been away for over 100 years now from Leitrim. So as people ask me where I'm from, I say I was born in Edinburgh, but I'm from Leitrim. And, it's not a romantic thing. It's just when I go up that hillside and I look out over the fields, I just feel a connection. And I think, well, my family has been in Edinburgh for less than 100 years. They've been in Leitrim, North Leitrim for, centuries. And that to me is more important. But it is a reaching out. It is trying to find a way of defining myself as a Leitrim man. And if I could just tell you 3 short stories to explain how the GAA does that. We were over, my son and I, because he's caught the bug as well. We were over watching Leitrim play. I think it was Roscommon. This would be more than 10 years ago. And we were at Mass down in Drumkeerin. And John Joe Byrne calls me over afterwards. He says, I want you to meet someone. He says, this is Colm Clarke. He said his family used to farm up at Drumkeerin where your family did. The butchers actually in Drumkeerin. But he said Colm's making his debut for the county this afternoon. So it was great to meet him. All the best. Went down to Park Sean, as excited and hyper as I always am there. And in the first 2 minutes of his first game for the county, Colm bursts through and scores a great goal. Now that connection, this is a guy representing the county. I was speaking to him this morning. His family worked the land, my family worked. That's far beyond anything you would get in soccer or any other sport. It's a visceral connection. Another story over in New York, Gaelic Park, end of the game. Patrick and I and my son, we go on the pitch, and I thought it'd be good to get a picture of Emlyn Mulligan, big hero. He'd scored a shed load of points that day. So I'm kind of shyly standing around all the people that are chatting to Muggsy. He looks up and says, "Sean, great to see you. Come on, great to see you." And I'm thinking, how does he know me? You know, that's Emlyn Mulligan playing for Leitrim, but he's saying hello to me. And there's people like him, Gary Reynolds, Enda Lyons, that have sort of reached out in return to me and recognised my support. And that helps in the belonging bit. And the last story would be from much more recently. We were over in Leitrim trying to show my son's fiance the sort of bog that we come from so that she knows what she's marrying into. And we went up through Anna Duff, and I said to Patrick, we'll have a look at the Centre of Excellence, because he hadn't seen it. So we went in, had a walk round, and we're just getting back into the car, and a door opens and a figure comes out. And I thought, well, better go over and explain what we were doing. So I went over, and this figure says, "Sean, I haven't seen you since we were on the plane back from New York." And it was Brian Blake. And it's that kind of, you know, I'm not some sort of strange fanboy on the other side of the water. I'm part of it. And of course, the 50-mile challenge does that exactly, because you're finding out about people that you wouldn't otherwise, or I wouldn't otherwise have met. People like Mike Feeney and that, who chat away on Facebook and on the pages, and you just feel that you're part of something bigger. And it's great. I mean, one of the good things about whether it's New York or London or Park Sean is, you know, I could go year to year in Edinburgh and never see another Leitrim top. But to be in a place where there's Leitrim tops everywhere. I remember walking down 8th Avenue in New York after the game, and this guy, didn't know him from Adam, stops us and says, "How do the lads get on, you know, in the middle of New York, because you've got a Leitrim top on?" And going to Mass in St. Pat's Cathedral, and there's all these Leitrim tops scattered about. That kind of sense of belonging is really important to me. And thanks to the internet, I suppose the 50 miles challenge is something I can do to show support, but also feel I'm part of a bigger enterprise, and people know who I am. They know I'm doing it. And it's just a good way of starting the year, basically.
Talk to us about last January, and you took part in the challenge there as well. And I suppose, what were two of your highlights from that particular time and your participation in that?
I think what I try to do, obviously, because as far as I know, there's nobody else in Edinburgh or even possibly Scotland doing it, is to maybe choose walks where there's a bit of scenery or something that people would recognise, whether it's, I don't know, Murrayfield Stadium or the Castle in Edinburgh or something like that, and say, this is where I am, this is why I'm doing this walk in this area, so that people get a sense of the fact that there are Leitrim folk all over the world doing this, all with the same sort of focus, which I think is, you know, for a county which is very much dependent, I suppose, on its diaspora. I think it's important that people at home know that those of us who aren't at home are thinking about the place, and it's important to us, and we will do things, we will get out of our beds, and we will walk, and we will get sore legs, because the county matters to us.
It's funny you should talk about not having other people from Leitrim in Edinburgh taking part in this, or going on nice walks in scenic areas. I spent a weekend in Edinburgh a couple of years back, and myself and a friend, an American friend as it happens, walked to the top of Arthur's Seat, which of course you'll be well familiar with. There's a beautiful view back from a relatively large mountain just in the city behind the palace. And I'm sitting at the top, and there was a group of students slagging a guy from being from Leitrim, and it was so bad that I had to actually get involved and defend him. Turns out it's Fergal McMorrow, who played this year for Drumkeerin in the senior championship in Leitrim. So there are Leitrim people around Edinburgh.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure we can round them all up, and hopefully one or two of them might be watching this and go, do you know what, I'm going to drop Sean. I know you're very active on social media, particularly Twitter. I see it come up, a lot come up on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm sure you'd be more than happy to entertain anyone from the general area who wants to maybe go to the top Arthur's Seat or the Castle or Murrayfield or some of these places. Maybe even Easter Road might be.
Absolutely.
I know you've got a link to Hibernians yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it happens in the strangest places. Years ago, I was walking through Central Park and I had a Leitrim jacket or something on, and one of the guys that drives the horses and carts just in the distance shouted, "Hi, Leitrim! Oh, Leitrim!" And it is kind of, and occasionally you might spot someone in the distance in Edinburgh and you think, "Is that Leitrim top?" But you do feel a bit lonely sometimes, and you have to explain to people what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Sean, that's pretty much all we have time for on this little bonus episode of the Leitrim GAA podcast. Of course, all kicks off on the 1st of January, but register beforehand. There's a lovely new hat to come out again this year. If you have last year's, this year's one is slightly different. Haven't seen it yet, but it looks, I know I've been told it's very impressive, nice dark green colour, maybe opposed to the fluorescent last year. Very recognisable on the streets, whether it's Edinburgh or Carrick and Shannon or anywhere else in between. Do get out and support. And of course, all the proceeds going to the GAA and the Ladies Gaelic Football Association this year. Sean, where do people in Edinburgh get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to reach out and say hello if they're in the area and want to get involved and support?
Probably on Twitter at Sean McP. That would be the best way, probably.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Sean, a pleasure as always chatting to you, and best of luck through the challenge and racking up those 50 miles through the month of January. Thanks very much for chatting.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Bethany. Good to see you.